Welcome to a new episode of the Heroic History Podcast, where we dive deep into some of history's most fascinating figures. We're heading back to ancient Rome to uncover the incredible story of Spartacus, the gladiator who dared to defy the might of the Roman Republic.
A story that really captures the imagination, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
A slave rising up to challenge one of the most powerful empires in history.
It's incredible.
But Spartacus's rebellion wasn't just brute force. It was a complex web of social and economic and political tensions that ignited this firestorm.
Right. And to really dive into that, I think we need to start with the man himself. What do we actually know about Spartacus before the rebellion?
Well, that's where it gets interesting. A lot of Spartacus's early life is shrouded in mystery, which honestly kind of adds to his mystique. We believe he was likely a free man from Thrace, a region in what is now modern-day Bulgaria, known for its fierce warriors.
So this Thracian warrior ends up captured by the Romans, forced into this brutal world of gladiatorial combat. I mean, can you imagine being ripped from your homeland and thrown into this life where you're trained to fight to the death for the entertainment of others?
It's a stark reminder of just how brutal Roman society could be. And to really grasp Spartacus's rebellion, we have to understand this world. The Romans viewed gladiators as commodities, tools of their amusement, even the term that they use for a gladiatorial school. Ludus translates to game, which highlights their callous disregard for these men's lives.
And Spartacus was trained as a murmillo, right?
Exactly.
Weren't those the heavily armored gladiators, kind of like the tanks of the arena?
Yeah. The murmillo was a heavyweight gladiator. Wielding a heavy sword and shield, they were trained to be powerful, agile, able to withstand incredible punishment, while also delivering devastating blows. Their matches were a spectacle of both brutality and skill, designed to enthrall the Roman crowds.
Wow. It's almost ironic that from this cauldron of violence, a rebellion would emerge that would shake the very foundations of Roman society. So tell me about that pivotal moment, the escape from the Ludus and Capua.
Well, Capua was a city known for its wealth and its decadence, and its insatiable appetite for gladiatorial games. In 73 BC, Spartacus, along with about 70 other gladiators, staged a daring escape from their Ludus.
Okay, so how did they pull that off? I mean, weren't these gladiators heavily guarded?
Think desperation mixed with ingenuity. They overpowered their guards, using whatever they could find: cleavers, skewers, even kitchen knives. They then managed to seize a shipment of gladiatorial weapons, finally gaining access to the tools of their trade.
Wow, and then they make a beeline for Mount Vesuvius, right?
That's right.
I remember reading that was a brilliant strategic move.
Absolutely. Choosing Vesuvius, a dormant volcano overlooking the Bay of Naples, as their initial base was a stroke of genius. It provided natural defenses, access to resources, and it must have served as a powerful symbol of defiance against their Roman oppressors.
So Vesuvius, the volcano that would later bury Pompeii, becomes a refuge for these rebellious gladiators. But this wasn't just a group of escaped slaves anymore, was it?
Not at all. Spartacus was building an army, a force capable of challenging Roman military might, and he attracted a diverse group of followers: runaway slaves, free men from the surrounding countryside, shepherds, even women. They all flocked to his banner, united by a common desire for freedom and vengeance against Roman oppression.
That brings us to the Roman response. Didn't they initially underestimate Spartacus and his ragtag army?
The Romans, accustomed to their legions and structured warfare, saw these escaped gladiators as a minor nuisance. They sent a praetor, a Roman official named Glaber, with a small, hastily assembled force to quell the uprising.
And this underestimation proved to be a fatal mistake for the Romans, didn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Spartacus, having been trained in Roman military tactics, used this knowledge to his advantage. He understood the Roman way of war. But he wasn't bound by their rigid formations and strategies. He adapted, improvised, and exploited the strengths of his diverse and highly motivated army.
So walk us through that first encounter between Spartacus and Glaber on the slopes of Vesuvius.
Spartacus, using his knowledge of the terrain and the element of surprise, lured Glaber's forces into a trap. The rebels, fueled by desperation and the desire for freedom, completely routed the Roman army, a victory that sent shockwaves throughout Roman society.
What a turn of events, the disposable gladiators defeating a Roman force. What did this victory mean for Spartacus's growing rebellion.
It was a turning point. This victory wasn't just a military win, it was a symbolic blow to Roman authority. It showed that these slaves, these gladiators, could not only fight, but also outmaneuver and defeat Roman legions. It emboldened thousands more to join Spartacus's cause. And that's where things get really interesting. That victory at Vesuvius had repercussions far beyond the battlefield.
Oh yeah, it challenged the very core of Roman beliefs about their social order.
Imagine the fear and uncertainty gripping the Roman elite. Their world, built on the backs of slaves, was suddenly threatened by those they deemed inferior.
So after that initial defeat, Spartacus and his rebel army embark on a series of daring raids across Italy, right?
Yes, and these weren't just random acts of violence. Spartacus was strategic. They targeted wealthy Roman estates, not only for supplies, but also to liberate more slaves, swelling their ranks.
And I also read that Spartacus maintained a surprising degree of discipline within his army. That seems counterintuitive for a rebel force.
Absolutely. Spartacus understood that chaos wouldn't lead to lasting freedom. He implemented a level of organization and discipline, likely drawing upon his own experience in the gladiatorial arena.
Yeah, and there's that fascinating account of him staging gladiatorial games, but with captured Roman soldiers forced to fight. What do you make of that?
It was a stroke of psychological brilliance. By forcing the Romans to fight as gladiators, Spartacus was turning the tables, dehumanizing them in the same way. They had dehumanized him and his followers.
Talk about a powerful message. This wasn't just about revenge. It was about dismantling the very system that had enslaved them.
Exactly. It sent shockwaves through Roman society. If their own soldiers could be reduced to the level of gladiators, it challenged their entire worldview.
So at this point, Rome realizes they have a full-blown crisis on their hands. How did they escalate their response to Spartacus?
The Senate, initially dismissive, now scrambles to assemble two consular armies, each led by a consul, one of the highest-ranking officials in the Roman Republic. These were seasoned legions, the backbone of Roman military might, sent to crush the rebellion.
Wow. But even facing these professional legions, Spartacus doesn't back down. He continues to outmaneuver them, right?
He does. And this really showcases his military genius. Spartacus understood that traditional Roman tactics, relying on heavy formations and disciplined maneuvers, wouldn't work against his fast-moving, highly motivated force.
So he adopts a more fluid, guerrilla-style warfare.
Exactly. He utilizes speed and surprise, and his knowledge of the Italian terrain to his advantage. He splits his forces to attack multiple targets, sowing confusion and disrupting Roman supply lines.
And he actually manages to defeat both of these consular armies, inflicting heavy casualties on the Romans.
These victories solidify Spartacus's reputation as a brilliant military strategist, but more importantly, they fuel the growing panic in Rome.
This is no longer a slave revolt. It's a threat to the very heart of the Republic. What does Rome do at this point?
They turn to one of the wealthiest and most ambitious men in Rome, Marcus Licinius Crassus.
Crassus, the man who would later form the first triumvirate with Julius Caesar and Pompey.
Yes, that Crassus. He sees an opportunity to make his mark, to crush this rebellion and rise to prominence. He raises a new army, 8 legions strong, and is granted extraordinary powers to deal with Spartacus.
Crassus was known for his ruthlessness, wasn't he? Didn't he use some pretty brutal tactics to instill discipline in his troops?
He did. He understood that fear could be as effective as loyalty. There are accounts of him using decimation, a practice where 1 in 10 soldiers are randomly selected and executed as punishment for cowardice or disobedience.
That's brutal.
Yeah.
But I guess it sent a clear message that failure wasn't an option for his legions.
Exactly. Crassus wasn't just a wealthy politician, he was also a shrewd military strategist. He understood that fighting Spartacus required a different approach than traditional Roman tactics.
So instead of directly engaging Spartacus's agile forces, he adopts a strategy of containment.
Precisely. Crassus implements a long game, aiming to wear down Spartacus's forces through attrition. He constructs a massive wall and trench across the Bruttium Peninsula, effectively trapping Spartacus and his army in the southern tip of Italy.
It seems like a desperate move for Spartacus. Why didn't he try to break out of this trap while he still had the chance?
That's one of the enduring mysteries of this story. Some historians believe Spartacus may have become overconfident after his string of victories.
Or perhaps he had a different plan in mind. Weren't there accounts of him trying to negotiate with pirates?
Yes, there's evidence suggesting Spartacus attempted to secure passage for his army across the Strait of Messina to Sicily with the help of Seleucian pirates.
Sicily, with its history of slave uprisings, might have offered Spartacus a chance to regroup and potentially establish a new base.
But for whatever reason, the deal falls through. The pirates either betrayed Spartacus or got cold feet, fearing Roman reprisals.
So trapped in the south of Italy,
Yeah.
facing a vastly superior Roman army, what options were left for Spartacus?
Facing this dire situation, Spartacus makes a fateful decision. He decides to turn and fight.
It must have been a desperate gamble, knowing that the odds were heavily stacked against him.
It was. The final showdown between Spartacus and Crassus takes place near the Salaris River. Accounts of the battle are, of course, biased towards the Roman perspective, but we know it was a bloody and brutal affair.
And in a final act of defiance, Spartacus kills his own horse before charging into the Roman lines.
It's a powerful image, isn't
Yeah.
it? A warrior king, relinquishing his last symbol of power, choosing to fight and die alongside his men.
This final battle marks the end of Spartacus's rebellion. What happened to him? Was his body ever found?
Despite extensive searches by the Romans, Spartacus's body was never identified. This, in a way, adds to his legend. He vanished into the mists of history, leaving behind a legacy of defiance and resistance.
Even though Spartacus's body was never found, we know his rebellion was brutally crushed. What happened to his followers?
Crassus, determined to make an example of the rebels and quash any future uprisings, ordered the crucifixion of 6,000 captured slaves along the Appian Way, one of the main roads leading into Rome.
That's a horrifying image. Thousands of crucifixions lining the road. What a chilling display of Roman power and cruelty.
It was certainly intended as a deterrent, but ironically, this act may have contributed to Spartacus's enduring legacy.
How so? It seems like a definitive Roman victory.
By making such a public and brutal spectacle of Spartacus's defeat, the Romans inadvertently turned him into a martyr. This act of cruelty solidified his image as a symbol of resistance against oppression.
So while Rome sought to erase Spartacus's memory through violence, they actually amplified it.
Precisely. Spartacus's story resonated with those who felt oppressed and marginalized. His name became a rallying cry for those who sought to challenge authority.
It's amazing how a historical figure can take on a life of their own, becoming a symbol that transcends time and place.
Absolutely. And Spartacus's story is a prime example of that. He embodies the human desire for freedom, the courage to resist, even in the face of overwhelming odds.
What about Crassus? Did crushing this rebellion propel him to greater heights in Roman society?
Crassus returned to Rome, expecting a triumph, a lavish public celebration granted to victorious generals. But the Senate, perhaps wary of his growing power and popularity, only gave him an ovation, a lesser honor.
Oh, wow. That must have been a blow to his ego, especially considering his rival Pompey was granted a full triumph for his victories in Spain around the same time.
It certainly fueled the rivalry between them. This tension, along with their ambition, would later contribute to the demise of the Roman Republic and the rise of Julius Caesar.
Wow. It's a reminder that history isn't just about individual events, but also about the complex interplay of personalities and ambitions
Yeah.
that shape the course of empires.
Exactly, and the story of Spartacus, though seemingly a self-contained rebellion, ripples through Roman history, impacting events that would unfold years later.
So looking back at Spartacus's story, what are the key takeaways? What lessons can we glean from this Thracian gladiator who dared to challenge the might of Rome?
I think one of the most powerful lessons is that even those deemed powerless can rise up and challenge the status quo. Spartacus was a slave, a gladiator, yet he managed to build an army, achieve stunning victories, and instill fear in one of the most powerful empires the world had ever seen.
His story also highlights the importance of adaptability and strategic thinking. He understood Roman tactics, but didn't let that limit him. He adapted, improvised, and utilized the strengths of his diverse forces.
And perhaps most importantly, Spartacus's story reminds us that the human spirit will always yearn for freedom. That desire, that drive for liberty, can be an incredibly potent force, even against seemingly insurmountable odds.
Spartacus may have been defeated on the battlefield, but his legacy of defiance, his courage in the face of oppression, continues to inspire us centuries later.
His story serves as a reminder that the fight for freedom and justice is never truly over. It's a fight that echoes through history, the fight that continues to this day.
Well, thank you for joining us today on this incredible journey into the world of ancient Rome and the remarkable story of Spartacus. It's a tale filled with drama and intrigue, and ultimately, a powerful testament to the enduring human spirit.
It's been a pleasure exploring this captivating story with you, and I hope it encourages our listeners to delve deeper into history, to uncover the stories of those who dared to challenge the norms, and fight for a better world.
And who knows, maybe some of these stories will inspire us to fight our own battles for justice and equality in the world today.
Indeed. As we learn from the past, we may find the courage to shape a better future.
Thanks for tuning in to this deep dive. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep the flame of curiosity burning bright.